For me, the biggest issue facing the world, at least in the human realm, the socio-political realm, is how to get the ideas that I think have worked for us, basically the ideas of the Enlightenment, of democracy, of science, of skepticism, of reason, rationality, of humanitarianism, how to get the rest of the world to capitalize on that trend that we've enjoyed for so long. It didn't come easy to us. It doesn't mean that we're superior in any cosmic sense, but we have hit on a way of living that I think is better to the alternatives. That is classic liberal democracy informed by science and reason. There are large chunks of the world that haven't got there yet. They could do a lot of damage until they have their secular enlightenment. I have no solution as to how to speed that up. Clearly, sending armies in and imposing it by force hasn't worked too well. It's unclear to me what will work well, but I wish we knew. It's hard to know what the obstacles are. There are certain features in human nature. People, I think, are left to their own devices, tribal. People left to their own devices are dogmatic. They'd rather that their truth be imposed than challenged. They are, I think, by nature, self-deceived. It's painful to work your way out of those all too human traits, and it's a constant battle. To live in a modern society is to be criticized, to be refuted, to be hemmed in by rules that you don't wish wouldn't apply to you, to have to state your case, to constantly justify what you do. It would take a historian of ideas that is wiser than me to diagnose how the West managed to do it in a way that could apply to other cultures, how modernization took place. Part of it might be technological, the spread originally of the printing press and affordable books, but we live in an age today where we have even better media like the internet, and that isn't a magic wand that brings the entire world into the Enlightenment. So how those attitudes change is, I think, an important and unsolved puzzle. I think the only way to make sense of nature and nurture is, first and most obviously, to point out that these are not alternatives, that you couldn't have nurture, that is the creation and transmission of culture, without a rich system of emotion and learning to make sense of it, to create the culture, to acquire the culture if you're faced with it, learning it as a child. And in the other direction, it would be a pretty useless kind of innate human nature if it couldn't take in information from the environment, if it couldn't figure out the kind of physical and social world that it had been placed in and soaked up information as to how to prosper in it. So you need both. How do they interact? Well, you have to specify, I think, the innate motivational systems, the innate learning mechanisms that make learning and transmission of culture possible. So something is innate. What is innate is not concrete behaviors or chunks of knowledge. What is innate is an ability to analyze the world and to learn in certain ways. Language makes it concrete. We could not possibly be born with English. On the other hand, just an ability to learn generically isn't enough, because you can take a baby and you could take a cat or a parrot, give them the same environment, the baby will learn to speak, the cat won't. So something innate must be there as well. In the case of language, it would be a motive and an ability to analyze the signals coming out of someone else's mouth as being formed out of units that have fixed meanings within a community and combinatorial rules that allow new ideas to be expressed by arranging these fixed signals in different orders and combinations. A brain mechanism that is equipped to do that, to find the words, the nouns, the verbs, the phrases, to analyze speech as having that logic. That's what's innate, not just a generic ability to learn at one extreme, not knowledge of English at the other extreme. I don't believe there's such a thing as free will in the sense of a ghost in the machine, a spirit or soul that somehow reads the TV screen of the senses and pushes buttons and pulls levers of behavior. There's no sense that we can make of that. I think our behavior is the product of physical processes in the brain. On the other hand, when you have a brain that consists of 100 billion neurons connected by 100 trillion synapses, there is a vast amount of complexity that means that human choices will not be predictable in any simple way from the stimuli that have impinged on it beforehand. We also know that that brain is set up so that there are at least two kinds of behavior. There's what happens when I shine a light in your eye and your iris contracts, or I hit your knee with a hammer and your leg jerks upward. We also know that there's a part of the brain that does things like choose what to have for dinner, whether to order chocolate or vanilla ice cream, how to move the next chess piece, whether to pick up the paper or put it down. That is very different from your iris closing when I shine a light in your eye. That second kind of behavior, one that engages vast amounts of the brain, particularly the frontal lobes, that incorporates an enormous amount of information in the causation of the behavior, that has some mental model of the world that can predict the consequences of possible behavior and select them on the basis of those consequences. All of those things carve out the realm of behavior that we call free will, which it is useful to distinguish from brute involuntary reflexes, but which doesn't necessarily have to involve some mysterious soul. I can't claim to have insight from my own work and writing on particular political events like an election. I don't think I have opinions as a private person, but I don't think they're more valuable than anyone else's. I mean, just at the most general level, certainly I think it would be that our political leadership should be of a piece, engaged in the same dialogue with our scientific and intellectual community. It's a bad state of affairs if you've got the universities and the scientists and the public intellectuals in one ideological camp and leadership in another. Now that has to involve modifications in both ways. I think a political leadership that blows off science can lead to nothing but disaster. I think, though, for their part, people in universities and newspapers have to open their minds to have the same kind of critical self-reflection that everyone must have, to realize that universities can also kind of spiral into a self-contained ideological, almost religious cult, and that it's important for universities to open up and welcome ideas from smart people who aren't in that particular orbit. I think that think tanks and policy institutes have been invaluable in that regard, that there are certain ideas that don't come out of university departments because a university becomes a tribe or a culture, has an ideology, and they have to realize that they're not infallible and welcome ideas. I don't think universities have been completely successful at doing that either.